context and stressor. So let's look at the context of this. So it's important to acknowledge that mental health, even pre-pandemic, is an important aspect, and people have been advocating for mental health. But during the COVID-19 context and all our experiences, there are certain actually triggers that or stressors that are contributing to the mental health of all of us. I think all of us can relate to this. So virus exposure, I mean, that's a given. I think all of us have that fear of getting the virus or fear of contamination. So that's really the at the bottom of this party of the experience, and then the mental health issues. This is really a reality for everybody. So exposure to virus, and that's why we're doing all of this health protocol because of this. So that's one context. Okay, another one is the uncertainty and ambiguity of the current situations and all that is happening. I think today, March 12, is like the anniversary when the university actually declared that, or not only just the university, but the entire country, that there will be like quarantine starting March 15. So we're 1 year into quarantine. But after 1 year, there's still so much uncertainty and ambiguity. I think all of us don't know when are we going to be vaccinated. That's the question that we are asking right now. Before we're talking about when will the lockdown or the quarantine end, and maybe one of the uncertainty for us faculty is like when will classes open, when will we have face-to-face classes. So that uncertainty is really something that contributes to our mental health. Then, of course, the quarantine lockdown, the isolation boundary issue. So, again, this is something that we can all relate. There's no explanation needed to this. That particular issue uh, is salient to many others who have been having problem about boundary at home, working, and then at the same time attending to family matters. Okay, and then the occupational stress brought by work from home and online classes. Okay, we don't have to go too far. We can all relate to our own experiences, personal experiences, how have been doing, how have we been adjusting to this online classes. So there's certain stressors like doing your online class, taking care of the children, cooking for the family, for maybe for the mothers and also for the fathers, and then attending to uh, day-to-day affairs at home. And then the occupational stress brought about by workload and burnout. Okay, how many of us here are aware that okay, am I is this burnout already? Why am I getting tired? And I don't only talk about physical tiredness or physical fatigue, but also emotional tiredness. And then family concerns, and then children care needs. Those of us who have children, or those of us who have younger siblings, can really like relate to this experience. While I'm doing my work, I also have to attend to my children. I also have to attend to my siblings, and I also have to help at home. So these are the reality, and of course, relationship issues because of that constant togetherness, and then also the isolation issue. So relationships are affected not only between couple, between spouses, but even among parents and children, among siblings, and among other family members. And we cannot escape this at the economic and financial concerns. Maybe not for all, but for many. Okay, so at an individual level, at an organizational level, and even at country level, the job loss. Okay, and then some of us are not able to do things that we have been doing or attending to before. So these are all the context of the COVID-19 phenomenon and how they can impact mental health. Okay, so of course, part of the context also is the interpersonal losses that some of us are experiencing, separation, physical separation, and then isolation, and really death. Okay, for many of us who have experienced death of a loved one, family member, friend, people we know, colleague, people close to our heart. So these are all the context of COVID-19. Now, how can they impact mental health? So these are some of the things that happen because of all of this context. At the beginning, the mental health professionals are really saying that it's normal to feel sad, stressed, confused, scared, or angry during a crisis. In fact, it is not, it is more quote unquote not normal if you're not feeling any of this at all. I think we can all say that at one point during this one whole period, we felt this. And that's okay. And we are in a crisis and up to this point. Okay, so now, but the impact actually varies in terms of severity and then length of the impact. So during the this COVID-19, what are some of this mental health outcome or like impact to our own mental health? Although we said that during crisis, it is normal to feel sad, scared, and anxious, at a certain point, we will find out, or maybe we will recognize in ourselves that we are now feeling more anxious, more angry, and then the level of moodiness is happening more frequently. So this is not, well, the normalcy in terms of the crisis now has become like I am doing it more often. Okay, so this is why I said uncharacteristic anxiety, anger, or moodiness. And then one of the impact also is really the social withdrawal and isolation for some, not all, but for some. I know of like let's say colleagues and friends who will say, I like this, I like the quarantine or the those who are actually the more introvert. I can work at home, I can work at my own pace. Okay, that's fine for some. But many, there are also like people who have felt the feeling of isolation and that kind of withdrawal. And then for many, and I also speak as a practicing psychologist, that the increase of people seeking out or reaching out to psychologists has increased. Okay, that sense of hopelessness and then feeling overwhelmed. Okay, and then of course, the anxiety. And then I'd like also to talk about grief. Okay, in many literature and many studies in terms of mental health during COVID-19, grief is really one of the studied factor or outcome of mental health. And grief is related to the losses that we have experienced, the death, loss of a job, and then maybe the loss of like being able to do things that we used to do. Travel, okay, not being able to travel for some, that's kind of loss. Losing people that we love, both through death or like we will not be able to visit them in their provinces or wherever they are. And when pre-pandemic, we are able to do that frequently. Okay, so there's grief, experience of grief, and then the suicide pandemic. Okay, I don't have the statistics, but certain reports would talk about that this has increased in some countries, particularly to certain groups. Okay, and then the stigma. The mental health issues is already stigmatized. Now, the COVID-19 is also stigmatized. If you get sick of COVID-19, there is also a stigma. Now, combine the two, you can just imagine the stigma. Okay, but evidence shows that that stigma due to coronavirus can actually lead to this. Reduce in people seeking medical care and reduce in people adhering to intervention, and then they will just isolate themselves. So in other words, it's not actually helping their mental health. And of course, we all know that at the extreme side of it, so one of the mental health outcomes of all the experiences, all the contexts are, is really like depression. Okay, and then and these are some of the signs and symptoms I talk about here of clinical depression. But of course, some people can just manifest some of the symptoms. And then, of course, further, these are also the other symptoms of this depression, like sleep disturbance, and then certain feeling of anxiety, the loss of interest or pleasure in doing things that we used to enjoy, tiredness, and then of course what we usually know only is really like the sadness, but there's more to depression than feeling sadness. And of course I think everybody at some point, that and that of course include myself also, feel certain anxiety. Okay, these are the common anxiety signs and symptoms. So when we talk about anxiety, there are more physiological manifestations of the anxiety. Okay, now, but what do, so I presented the context, and also I presented the impact on mental health. What do research say? There's one particular very interesting article that I saw in terms of this, relating mental health and COVID-19. Now, the pandemic's effects on mental health will show substantial variation across people, situation, and time. While we can say that there is a global like pandemic in terms of this experience, or like let's say a community kind of trauma, the impact is really different for different people. And that we need to recognize. And then we're even saying, why is that person more anxious? And I'm okay with it. Because people really react differently. And then it's also important to look at, there are social factors that will be critical to mental health outcomes. So some of the social factors can actually include social support, a supportive environment, having your family, and many other things. And and what is interesting, some people will experience improved social and mental health functioning. Those maybe that have been suffering from certain mental conditions, there are some literature that say that they have actually improved in terms of their functioning. Okay, I will be very quick now in the succeeding slide. So there are certain vulnerabilities that will probably make more people more at risk in terms of mental health issues, and that includes like a general like a feeling of fears, when we're more fearful of contamination, death, and that kind of fear really overwhelm us, so that might actually aggravate our mental health condition. And then internalizing tendency, what is that in psychology? That actually means that rather than expressing it outwardly or behaviorally, so we keep them to ourselves, the feelings, bottled up feelings, and then we don't show it, so that will actually put more people at risk. Okay, in terms of mental health. But there are certain protective factors. I will just mention some, like what I said. Social support is very important. When I talk about social support, it's from family, friends, colleagues, and even among us as a community here in the LSU. And then in some people, the sense of meaning and purpose also help them in terms of make sense of that experience, and that can serve as a protective factor in uh, at an individual level. And of course, we always hear this word, so I will not discuss it. So this is another topic that can really be elaborated, and that will require a different forum. So resilience, okay, so our own resilience, that is important, but literature also says that we can develop resilience. It's not something that either you have it or you don't have it, but this is something that we can develop. Then moving forward, what can be done now? It's important that as individual we take care of our mental health. Okay, and there are many different ways of taking care of our mental health. And mental health, when we talk about wellness, we talk about this different dimensions, not just the mental health, but even our occupational wellness. How are we taking care of ourselves when we do online classes, when we do our work, when we do our meeting? So all of this needs to be like part of our like um, consciousness, that we need to take care of this different aspect of wellness. So what can we do? Self-care. So I've done webinars for different groups, and then I always like end that with like it's important to have self-care. So self-care, the WHO defines it as ability of us to be able to support ourselves. Okay, so self-care is any activity that we do deliberately. It's not something, ngayon gagawin ko and then makakalimutan, in order to take care of our mental, emotional health. And these are some of the pillars of self-care. So health literacy is important, self-awareness is important, doing physical activity is important. How many of us are doing some physical activity? Healthy eating is certainly important. There's risk avoidance or mitigation. So like in terms of like certain behaviors, okay, and then good hygiene, okay, is important, and rational, responsible use of products, services, diagnostic, and medicine. So, like when we talk about vaccines, so how what we do we have like a general feeling about it that we don't want it, or we want it without logical reason. And then just to share, this is something that because this is something that I developed, so I call it I cope. So during the pandemic, so I try to put something, and I'll not again explain it. The I cope means really how do we cope in this COVID-19 pandemic. So I just look at it. So I cope. So I have a compassionate heart. So I have an open mind. Open mind is very important. I have a purposeful spirit. I would like to. It's like having a mindful spirit, but I change it to purposeful, and then having an engaging body. So we need to be moving, we need to be active, both mentally and physically. And then these are some of the things that I saw on the internet. How do we take care of our mental health during COVID-19? We need to stay connected, maintain a healthy lifestyle, stay positive, stay informed, and seek support. Now, I'd like to end this with like doing research on mental health. So since this is like the forum for the different research center, there are many things that we can actually get into in terms of research. So we can look at the vulnerable groups. I'm looking at the different plenary sessions. There are many very interesting topics on the narratives of the different vulnerable groups. So it can include different people. We can look at in psychology, we can, and then sociology as well. So we can look at the different risk factors, both social individual factors, and then we can look at also the same thing, the protective factors, and then the mental health outcomes. And when I talk about mental health outcomes, I talk about from general positive adjustment to the extreme, which can be depression, and to some extent, some suicidal ideation for some people. I'd like to end this short sharing with this particular quote. So, taking care of our mental health still matters, even in and especially in midst of a global pandemic. So that's the mental health during COVID-19 pandemic. And so I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And I'd like to thank SDRC for the support and the opportunity to share with the community during this arts conference. Thank you, Miss Joahna,
Thank
Dr.
you, ma'am.
Joahna.
Thank you, ma'am. We have been reading a lot about mental health for 1 year, so I know it's difficult for you to combine everything in 10, 15
Yes.
minutes. Yeah, that's very challenging. Ma'am, I hope you don't mind. I have some questions for you.
Sure, sure, sure,
Okay.
Dr. Joahna. Sige,
Since I'm
sige.
not a psychologist, my questions are very practical. Ma'am,
Sure,
ma'am,
also.
I think 1 week ago, we have seen from the news yung caution fatigue. Something
Mm-mm.
about caution fatigue. Can you explain more about it, ma'am? Caution fatigue. How is that different from the usual fatigue we experience, ma'am?
You mean caution,
Yeah.
CAUTI?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I think generally how people are responding right now, there are certain group that are really okay, responding logically based on certain health guidelines, health protocols. But we can see also like what I mentioned, yung fear, the anxiety. So some people are generally more cautious. Okay, so like in terms of like even the health protocol, the wearing the mask, so hindi lang hindi lang isa, dapat dalawa, and then the constant the frequent washing, and then maybe other health protocols or the things that they're doing at home, bawal talaga lumabas, bawal ba kahit sa grocery. So I think the caution fatigue is that at a certain point people are feeling na yun na nga in Tagalog, nakaka parang pagod, isipin na palagi na lang merong ganong pag-iingat, na overly pag-iingat. And what is worse kasi, or what can happen when people have that caution fatigue, I hope we don't develop it, kasi you can go to the extreme. Parang sinasabi natin na magpi-flip na tayo. Okay na ba? Bahala na yung ano. So we start laxing in terms of our behavior. So we go out, kahit siguro nakakalimutan na natin yung face shield natin, or sabi bahala na, total naglax na naman yung government in terms of the guidelines. So that actually like create more maybe a problem later on kasi parang okay, isang taon na akong ganito. So and then we kind of like flip to the extreme of it, and we don't want that to happen to us. So we still need to be very logical. We still need to be cautious, but maybe not overly cautious. But yeah, but ako as a psychologist nga, parang I err to the side of more caution, of more cautiousness than if we're going to caution or no caution. So I will err to the side of that, and we know for obvious reason.
Parang ito ma'am yung napagod na sa pagsunod. Yung parang,
Yes, oo.
so that's caution fatigue. Thank you, ma'am.
Oo.
Ma'am, last question, ma'am. Earlier you mentioned about emotional fitness as part of mental health. Pero I was wondering, how do you know, ma'am, if there's something wrong already about your emotional fitness? Parang you're not emotionally fit anymore. Are there indicators for us?
That's really a very interesting question kasi minsan tayo parang if we're too passionate with our work, we really tend to forget about how we're feeling. But there are certain like indicators siguro yung mga basic indicators diyan na kunyari na kumbaga naapektuhan na yung yung sleep pattern mo. Okay? Tapos pati yung routine mo wala na. So parang like yung when you wake up, Zoom, etc. So and then napansin mo na merong pagbabago din sa behavior mo, characteristic mo. So mas nagiging siguro mainitin ang ulo mo, mas nagsasnap ka easily. Tapos dati more patient ka with your students. So ngayon parang kahit sinasabi we have to be patient with student, parang pigil na pigil yung galit mo. And then where do you saan mo nilalabas yan? So maaaring sa family members. So I think my take on that is we really need to be aware of ourselves. How are we reacting to certain situation? And if we are seeing that there are actually like changes in our behaviors, and then the way we relate with people or even yung work natin. Dati, okay, yung mga magagaling magsulat, dati nakakasulat ng 5 papers in 1 week. Ngayon, napansin mo, isa na lang. Tapos, and then dati, kayang-kaya mo itong kayang-kaya mong gawin yung trabaho mo, nagagawa mo ng mabilis. Ngayon, medyo bumabagal ka. So these are all behavioral indicators. But what is important is we need to be aware of this, yung changes sa body natin or kahit sa colleague natin. I think yun yung mas mahalaga. Siguro aware tayo, pero hindi natin alam yung colleague natin. Parang merong pagbabago and then we're quite parang medyo quick to judge, okay? But we need to understand that this is really a different situation. Kaya nga, with my ICO, parang really, we have to have parang yung compassionate heart.
Yeah.
And compassion is not only for others, but more importantly, self-compassion.
Agree, ma'am. Ma'am, later, if we have time, ma'am, the four of you can interact.
Yes, sure.
About your individual topics. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Joahna.
Thank you, ma'am. Our second speaker is a research fellow from representing the Bienvenido and Santos Creative Writing Center. And he will be sharing with us his topic entitled Recalibrating Our Writing Lives, a Personal Task on Writer's Adjustment to the COVID-19 Pandemic. So we would like to welcome Dr. Jose Victor Torres. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and thank you, Dr. Joahna, and good morning to all of us. I don't have any paper, sorry, no, but I'm not going to lecture or anything. But I'm basically going to share, what is probably some things that many of us have already encountered, and some of us have already are trying to struggle against it. Personally, we're talking about the pandemic and everything, and I'm glad that I listened to Dr. Tarroja's lecture because I almost didn't make it here in the in the talk. I've been unfortunately suffering from what we have. I usually call it my black dog. It's a term that we use sometimes for or depression, and well, it's not just because of a lot of things, but it's also so personal, a lot of things at home, but also a lot of things that have been happening, and we all shared that activity, the things that we do during this pandemic, and how to try to deal with this pandemic. No? But the title, of course, of my talk, is about recalibrating our writing lives. So, it's dealing with this pandemic that has greatly affected, in my case, my writing life. When the pandemic started, we all have to remember na pumapasok pa tayo noon. No, and we were basically going to LaSalle. We were attending classes and everything. And we tried to have our normal lives in spite of the fact that there is this sword already hanging over us. And when the lockdown occurred, hindi kaagad, in my case, hindi ko kaagad na-accept na wala akong gagawin kasi I have all of these plans. I was going to apply to be a research fellow, magsusulat ako, at magbabasa ako. I have been buying a lot of books, and I wanted to start reading and everything. But when the reality started setting in, it wasn't easy. In my case, nagkasabay-sabay. I was worried about my mother, who's 82 at that. Well, she was 87 at that time, last year. Tapos my sister, eksakto naman minalas itong kapatid ko dahil eksaktong yung lockdown. She had to have an operation for cancer, and she had to undergo that entire treatment during the pandemic itself. And what I mean here, it's that biglang dumami yung naging responsibilidad mo. Kasi before, when you leave the house to go to LaSalle, to go to school, asikasuhin mo yung eskwela, asikasuhin mo yung estudyante and everything, then you come home and try to settle into your home life and try to relax. But all of a sudden, I'm going to use the word trapped. You're trapped in your house, and you have everything that are planned here, but you suddenly also realize that you have these responsibilities that you have also to look out for. Not only that, the responsibilities of the house and the responsibility of doing outside of the house, because you have to take care. Tulad na sinabi ni Dr. Torres, there's always this fear of being contaminated and everything. And there's also this fear na hindi ka makalabas, and you have to take note of what is inside your pantry or what is inside your storage or your refrigerator, because of the lockdown, hindi ka makalabas sa refrigerator. Tapos ang pinoprovide doon, ang magiging provision mo lang ay yung ayuda na ibibigay sa ng local government. In our case dito I live in Cavite, in this case dito sa Cavite, ang binigay na ayuda sa amin was sardinas, bigas, and hotdog. It was kind of unreal at first, but you suddenly realize that it is a reality that you're going to have to deal with for an uncertain period of time. And it totally interfered with my mind of what to write. And I was at first, alam to ni Dr. Trinidad, di ba? I was allowed to have a research grant to write a book of essays. Hindi ko masimulan dahil I can write about the pandemic, but it's the feeling and the emotion is different. The enthusiasm is not there because I think it becomes more personal and more it really affects your life. And sometimes, in a very tragic case, you tend to suppress what is in your mind. At least in my case, ayoko muna isipin ito masyado at baka mag-panic mode na naman ako. So, this lasted for several months. Then, nagkaroon na naman ng palibagong challenge when our school decided now to open online classes, and we had to think of everything, to think of what we are going to set up, to think of what components and gadgets that we have to have in order to do your responsibility as a professor. And this is probably where I was trying to, trying to put into context, of something that became useful for us in the pandemic. And this is, of course, our internet and everything. Now, I think the only good side for me that happened in our internet is that many of our internet providers made it a point to really increase the power of our internet in order for us to have online classes. They saw the necessity for it to happen. So when we started going back to school, in my case, when I started teaching again and everything, it was nice, because again, I was doing something that I liked when I was in La Salle. I was meeting students, even though it wasn't physical, but just online. But syempre iba pa rin. No? Iba pa rin yung dating. But as we're on our second second term, no? And nagsimula tayo mag-online, ay kalahati lang ng third term last year. The adjustments made it more not relaxing but comfortable, no? And we're slowly adjusting to what we have, and we're slowly getting to what we are hopefully achieving during this entire pandemic, no? It was only then, probably after when things started to loosen up, no, from ECQ, GCQ, then MECQ or something, whatever codes that came out in those times. So that was one of the studies I'm doing now. No, what are the words that started coming out during this pandemic? That I started seeing, that probably there is something good about the new ways that we have, especially when these things change you for the better. I'll give an example. My wife works in the Cultural Center of the Philippines, and we all know what happened. That when the pandemic happened, everything that is related to arts and culture was put on hold and everything. But there was one festival that the CCP managed to put out, and this was right in the middle of the pandemic. And my wife was production manager of that. This was the Virgin Lab Fest. It was the Playwrights Festival. And what happened was probably one of the biggest achievements that happened for us, Filipinos, with regards to arts and culture. It was the first time that probably we were actually the first. The Philippines was actually the first to put online live theatrical performances. No? Yung napapaload natin na pinalabas ang Hamilton, pinalabas ang doon sa Royal Shakespeare Theatre, doon sa internet and YouTube, these are all pre-recorded. What the Cultural Center did was to put all the performances live. No? So they had to schedule everything, especially for some of the actors who auditioned. They were actually in the United States. Some, I think, was in Dubai at that time. So they had to adjust to their time schedules, no, in order to have a live performances. Of course, there were backup recordings because of the unreliability of the internet. Okay, but what happened was, they managed to complete the entire festival with live performances. It was only then that we all of us suddenly realized, wow, no one is doing this. Not even Europe, not even the United States. We were doing it, and it was fun. All of a sudden, my wife became a techie. I mean, she couldn't even make loading an app on her smartphone. But now she's a techie. She can talk to me about how to do a background, to adjust some lights and everything. And they had to do it all while with stuff that was available in their houses because no one could go out yet at that time when the Virgin Love Fest was happening. So art and culture made adjustments. And what was probably nice is it was from the houses of this production people and from this actors and actresses. Di ba nag-realize na nag-realize yung nag-realize na what you need is lights for everything. Na tulad nito ng kailaw para makita yung mukha sa sa internet sa Zoom, no? So everything had to be adjusted. Everything had to be done. On my part, I started writing again. But it was very hard. No? May lumalabas na mga publishing houses who are opening now their publishing house, their manuscripts and everything. And writing again probably is a big adjustment for me because everything is going to be different. No? There are good sides that probably happen. There are always, if we always look at the bad side, of course, everything's bad. But there are good sides to it. But whenever my wife and I would talk about what happened this year, no, in the last few months, no, and we would ask ourselves, will everything go back to normal? We agreed on one thing. No, we may be going back, no, but things in reality won't be the same again. I may be writing again. I may be putting out a lot of things again. I may be doing books again, but everything will probably be unforgotten, or everything what happened this year will be unforgotten and will still affect our outputs in our creative processes. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. Perhaps my biggest takeaway after listening to you, sir, is the fact that the creative people have remained creative despite the COVID-19. So despite the need to change, to adapt, to modify, at the end of the day, people like you have remained creative. So that's my biggest takeaway. And perhaps my only question, sir, is your ending talked about going back to normal. That yes, we will go back to normal, but there will be changes perhaps. Can you just
Yes.
mention, sir, one concrete idea that you have? Like what will be the biggest change perhaps when it comes
I
to
lost
creative
friends.
writing? Uh-huh.
I lost friends. So I lost a lot of well, I lost friends who usually I would share my ideas in writing. No, well, we all know si Mendes, no, who was a playwright of in De La Salle, and of course, it's probably losing these friends that you talked a lot with when they were still alive, that you shared their ideas with, and it won't be the same because they are no longer there.
So the challenge, sir, is to look for new motivations, perhaps.
New motivators and
people to
probably
inspire us.
adjusting to what
Yeah.
was lost.
Yeah, I agree, sir. Thank you, sir, for the sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our third speaker for this plenary is Dr. Ador Torneo, the director of the De La Salle Institute of Governance, the Jesse M. Robredo Institute of Governance. He will be talking about the adaptability, reflections on the role of the Jesse M. Robredo Institute of Governance in the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's all welcome Dr. Ador Torneo. Sir, you have the floor. Dr. Torneo.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just share my my slides. All right. Okay. Good morning to everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizer, especially Dr. Dennis Trinidad, for inviting me to be part of this session and for the opportunity to share some thoughts, some perspective from our institute. So I'm Ador Torneo. I'm the director of the Jesse M. Robredo Institute of Governance, also known as the Institute of Governance. And this morning, This is the outline of my very short presentation. It's about our institute. What are the challenges that we faced, especially in the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic? How did our institute respond? And some of my personal reflections on the institute's role during this pandemic. So basically, I'm reflecting this question: how has the DLS-UGC Robredo Institute of Governance adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic? So just some brief overview. Our institute is, our vision is to be a center of excellence in implementing governance research and training in partnership with international and local institutions. And this is our mission. Our institute has been around for, I think, maybe 20 years now. We're celebrating our 2 decades. And most of our work is on innovative governance research, capacity building, and social engagement in partnership with a variety of organizations. But our focus is to strengthen value-based public service. As knowledge hub of good governance, and I'd like to emphasize this, we embody praxis, connecting our research with practice to do research that matters and improves the quality of life. So just some of the people that are involved. I am not the institute. There's a lot of people, and these are just some of the people. We have a lot of other fellows and affiliates that are connected to our institute and thus a lot of contributions to the work that we do. So what are the challenges? This week, last Monday was the celebration of the first day of what would turn out to be a very, very long lockdown. It's our 1-year anniversary. And some of the immediate challenges that we faced from the very beginning is thinking what would happen now. Many of our work has been laid out and planned for the year, but the immediate aftermath of the suspension and the lockdown caused indefinite suspensions and halting of many of our planned programs and projects. Essentially, many of our planned activities were put in limbo. We didn't know what will happen, what will proceed, and because many of our work is not just based on our institute, it depends also on a lot of our partners, including external partners. Many of our work had to be indefinitely suspended without any certainty of when they would continue, of whether they would continue at all. The institute also saw budget cuts and limitations on finances and resources. Many of our budgets were already committed to certain activities, but we are unable to mobilize them. And some of the fundings that we expected to receive were also dependent on the many projects and activities that we have. Because of the suspension, we are unable, we face some uncertainty with regard to some of these fundings and resources. Those projects and activities that would still proceed, we had to adapt and find ways to migrate them online. We had to recalibrate. How do we do this online? Is it possible even to do this online, or do we have to scrap the activity and kind of, plan it from the very beginning? And our institute also had to deal with the challenges. Do we continue our operations? Do we continue with our plan? Or do we find and fund new and meaningful ways to engage the challenges that arose as a result of the pandemic? We are a governance institute after all, So the institute was compelled to respond to the call of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are a governance institute, and one of the tenets of governance is really being responsive. We cannot pretend that we can just continue doing our research. We cannot pretend that we can just go on as normal and just carry on with our plans, knowing that pandemic is raging out there and bringing about a lot of issues and challenges in the communities, and local governments, even national government organizations. So what we did was immediately examine the gaps in COVID-19 policies and interventions and sought ways on how we can contribute. Given the limitations that I mentioned earlier, what the thing that first came to mind is recruiting and mobilizing volunteers to augment the limited resources and skills, as well as the limited mobility of the institute. So we did a call of invitations for volunteers, starting with students, alumni, colleagues in De La Salle University, as well as our partners from outside of De La Salle University. Okay, and we looked to our networks. We established new partnerships and entered into joint activities and collaborations with a variety of organizations, including our neighbor in Katipunan, no? With the Ateneo School of Government and the Asian Institute of Management. We've also found partners from among our usual roster of partners, but we also found new partners and friends during the time of the pandemic. So the greatest asset of the Institute is its intellectual resources and networks. And the thing that came to mind is how do we mobilize all of these intellectual resources? We have expertise on a wide variety of areas. No? We have people who are practitioners, people who come from a variety of disciplines, experienced, and recognized as experts in their own particular fields. The other approach that we had is to strengthen publication and production of knowledge products. One of the immediate results of the COVID-19 pandemic, the chaos of the pandemic, is what we call information asymmetry. No? There's a lack of information. There are a lot of things that we do not know. And as an institute, one of our roles is to be a think tank. Is how do we produce usable knowledge? No, in areas where there is not a lot of information or knowledge on. No? We also engage in an aggressive but strategic resource mobilization with the knowledge that our resources are limited and that we would probably be facing funding and other constraints. We engage in an aggressive resource mobilization drive. No? Instead of our usual attempts to get some small projects, we look at the more strategic sources, in particular the medium and long-term sources of funding that can complement the work of our institute. So I'll just browse you through some of the partnerships and collaborations that resulted from the efforts of the institute. So our first partners were the volunteer network. We established it through Facebook and social media. We were able to establish what we call the DLSU COVID-19 Community Research Response and Solutions Group that's connected to the Institute. No? We were able to recruit 200 and 800 volunteers respectively, all of whom committed to give part of their time, part of their efforts, and whatever help that they could to contribute to what we were trying to do. The first thing that we did in the first few weeks of the lockdown is to produce online infographics and disseminate them via social media, practical tips and advice, best practices. No? We shared them with the public and some of our local government partners. We were also able to establish the COVID-19 Academic Crisis Response Consortium. This is in partnership with the Asian Institute of Management, the Ateneo School of Government, and the Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health. Now we have a portal wherein we share all of the resources that we have related to our response to COVID-19. So this is still ongoing, and we have accumulated a wealth of knowledge resources by pulling together the respective expertise and resources of the different institutions. So some of the webinars that we did, we invited international speakers and experts, especially from countries that did well in dealing with COVID-19, and organized big webinars that invited a lot of our policymakers and government officials, private sector. Okay, these are some of them from Taiwan, Israel, and New Zealand. We also did some town hall meetings in partnership with AIM on education. We did some webinars on economic impact of COVID-19 to OFWs. You see that all of these events are results of collaboration during this time. No? The billing did not really matter to us. What we did was somebody would arrange an activity, and then we try to put whatever we can contribute. Sometimes we moderate, we host, or we invite people to be part of these activities. So we also had some events on rethinking local health governance. This now is led by our institute. And we invited experts from within De La Salle University and from outside of De La Salle University. More importantly, we invited a lot of practitioners to actually share some of the ideas that they had and their experiences in dealing with the challenges. No? And the result of these webinars, we wrote them into a book named Adaptive and Resilient Governance in Health Crisis Situation. So we also did to continue some of our originally scheduled events and activities, including the Open Budget Survey. Part of we co-hosted the Consortium on Democracy and Disinformation's research findings on disinformation. Okay, we've also organized some workshops. These are different from webinars because webinars are primarily there's a lot of information dissemination. But this one is actually meant to foster collaboration partnerships on a common research agenda and a common agenda for a variety of different organizations. So it has been very productive for the Institute, along with the Ateneo King Institute. With AKI, we are the first to, we are one of the first to publish policy briefs. No? Lockdown was March 15. By April 1, we've been started to publish policy briefs. We planned this for a long time, but the pandemic has made it imperative that our institute try to get our work as fast there as possible. So these were written not just by writers of De La Salle University. We had contributors from Australia, China, and different universities, not only within Metro Manila, but also outside Metro Manila. So we've been continuously publishing policy briefs on different issues. No? We published the 7th edition, and we still have 2 in the pipeline that will come out in the next 2 weeks. Okay. It fostered a lot of research collaborations because our work is not only being published by our institute, but we also did some collaboration with many of our colleagues from DLSU, writing, for example, and publishing articles on very important topics. Drug allocation model. We're working on a vaccine allocation model and looking at how to approach the things that are needed for a flexible learning ecosystem, especially in HEIs. We published a book, Adaptive and Resilient Governance in Health Crisis Situations. And this compiled some of the knowledge products that we have produced during the pandemic. Our research laboratory has been in full gear, and we've been producing a lot of research work, some of them in partnership with the SDRC. We've been doing studies on vaccination. We've been examining the policy logic of the Philippine government's response. We're also doing some work related to the elections, vaccines, studies on public trust and approval, impact of behavioral, not just studies on social media and other things. So these are things that we've been planning before the pandemic, but the pandemic has given us an opportunity to get them on full drive. So I will not go into some of these other things because we've also been continuing the things that we normally do, but just to focus on some of the reflections that we've had, no? On the things that we did. So we've been able to accomplish a lot of things, but the thing that we're most proud of is that some of our work has actually served as inputs to some national government policy. For example, the National Government Recovery Plan cites some of the knowledge products, some of the things that we do. We are also proud that several local government units have approached us when local chief executives, mayors, and governors have seen our products and requested copies of them. And some of them have told us that they were able to implement at least some of our recommendations in their own respective local governments. No? And some reflections. The COVID-19 pandemic, this is my last slide, no? Has challenged us in the Institute to re-examine our role in the face of a challenging, fast-changing, and highly fluid pandemic environment. Responsiveness is a tenet of good governance. It's just our duty as an Institute of Governance to respond and adapt to the call of the times. No? To an extent, we had to set aside some of the things we originally planned to do and address the more pressing needs of the time. No? The other thing is that civic consciousness and the spirit of volunteerism can be harnessed. This is something that we were able to utilize and tap, especially at a time of very limited mobility and resource constraints. No, it was a very happy surprise for us that a lot of people were actually willing to contribute whatever they have and help out. We just had to ask. No? Leadership is sorely needed at this time. There's a lot of resources, knowledge out there, but leadership is needed to bring them together. So within the La Salle University, we have a lot of expertise that we can tap, no? And we just need some way to, bring them together and direct them towards solving particular issues and challenges. On hindsight, the pandemic has also opened plenty of new opportunities for us. On hindsight, actually, I think we've done more in this year of the pandemic than we ever did since I assumed the directorship of the Institute. We've been able to raise more funds, publish more papers, do more workshops, trainings, and even directly input to policy more directly. So there are certain new opportunities that the pandemic has opened for us. The other thing is that collaboration is the norm. We've been collaborating with everyone who's willing to work with us. Okay, and the collaborations are not necessarily formal. MOUs and MOAs are not always necessary, and in fact, many of our productive and meaningful collaborations and partnerships are non-formal. Then last point I'd like to emphasize: good citizenship entails actively taking part in governance. It is finding ways, on how we can contribute our share in the shared governance of our community. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the sharing. I'm trying to connect here the first two presentations with your presentation. So please allow me to ask a double-barreled question, sir. I was just thinking while listening to you, did any of your research fellow experience the mental concerns shared by the first two speakers a while ago? And to what factor do you owe the research center's productivity? Because based on your presentation, you were very productive despite the COVID pandemic. So what could be the most important factor to which you owe the said productivity, sir?
I think one thing that I owe the productivity of the Institute is a very supportive environment. In De La Salle University, we have very supportive environment. The Vice Chancellor, Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation in particular, has been very supportive. The research centers, we've been working together. And the other research centers, I collaborate with Dr. Melvin Jabbar of the SDRC, for example. I invite colleagues in many departments. And I would not say that we were not affected or we were spared from all of these issues and concerns. I personally also experienced a slump. I even requested the help of our colleagues in psychology and trying to get some counseling. Because there were times that I also felt that we were trying to do a lot of things. Sometimes we forget to take a breath. We forget to breathe and take stock and reflect on the things that we do. But I think, in a way, part of the reason why we had been very productive is that there was a lot of people and a lot of energy. People wanted to do something. People wanted to contribute. And one of the things that I imagine causes people to have these difficulties is that sense of powerlessness, that in a pandemic situation where you have limited mobility and there are risks, there's nothing you can do. And that's, I think, the reason why we could get so many volunteers and we could get so many collaborators, because a lot of people wanted to do something. People wanted to contribute. And in a way, that is also kind of catalyzes, helps them kind of release, I'm able to do something. I'm able to contribute just a little. And maybe, just maybe, that kind of eases some of our worries and concern and anxieties a bit, when we're able to do that. My opinion.
Yes, thank you, sir, for sharing the bits of good news from your research center. Thank you, sir. And our last speaker for the plenary is the director of the Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, or SEARCH, Dr. Fernando Santiago Jr., who will talk about the story of an interdisciplinary research center during COVID-19. Sir, you have the floor. Dr. Santiago.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Trinidad, Dr. Estacio, my fellow center directors and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The title of my talk today is Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, the story of an interdisciplinary research center during COVID-19. I'm a historian, so my narrative is in the form of a brief history. So the Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub is the latest, one of the latest research centers in the university, founded in 2019. Our mission vision is to become a cutting-edge research center and networking hub that addresses regional concerns and serves as a social advocacy arm for De La Salle, Philippines. Our role is to generate Southeast Asian research, collaborate with specialists, network with other centers and institutes of Southeast Asian studies, provide resource materials, and serve as a hub for all matters concerning Southeast Asia. Our goal is to be a research center of, for, and by Southeast Asians. Now, since 2019, our objectives have been to build the center, develop a Southeast Asian awareness, make the center known locally and internationally, create a network of Southeast Asian scholars and researchers, generate funds to support research, produce quality research with focus on Southeast Asia, and also to uh, 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 provide or to engage in social engagement activities. So prior to the pandemic, and this is just my term, I call it anti-COVID-19, that era, we were doing what any center, okay, that is just starting would be expected to do. So we were gaining momentum by setting up our office in the Laguna campus. We were building a Southeast Asian book collection. And we had multiple activities like fora, a lecture series. Okay, we had social engagement and other research-related activities. And then COVID-19 happened. So, and as Dr. Torneo had mentioned earlier, COVID-19 derailed, okay, a lot of plans, okay? So when COVID-19 happened and the lockdown was announced, of course, like everyone else, we thought of how to adjust to the new circumstances. And what we immediately noticed was that the perspective, okay, with regard to the disease was very local, and that nobody was providing information about what was happening in the rest of the region. So during the first week or two, we evaluated the different available sources of information, okay, specifically statistics on COVID-19. And when we found what we would consider to be the most reliable, then that's when we started this COVID-19 Southeast Asia Statistics project. So this lasted, we started in March 22 and it lasted until July 31st, okay, because of certain issues. Now, aside from this, in June of 2020, we started offering webinars on COVID-19 in Southeast Asia. So we had a webinar on the history of pandemics in Southeast Asia, which was very well attended and well received worldwide. We had webinars that focused more on the local conditions. And we also had a webinar on the ethics of COVID-19. At this point, things began to move towards normalcy. And we found that, as was experienced by JRIG, that there were other institutions and within De La Salle University departments who were very keen to partner, okay, in jointly organized events. And thus we had joint activities with the various departments of the College of Liberal Arts, and these are just some examples. We also had the Southeast Asia National Day webinars to increase awareness, okay, on matters concerning other countries in the region, okay, within the Philippines, and at the same time to reach out to scholars in Southeast Asia. And again, these are just some examples. We were able to establish a partnership with the University Science Malaysia, okay, in a webinar series on various issues concerning social sciences. So thus we had the webinar on state and community responses to COVID-19 in Southeast Asia, reclaiming the city, stories and critical perspectives for Southeast Asia, and beyond categorization, stories of unshelteredness in Southeast Asia. And we have another one coming soon on decolonization in Southeast Asia. One of our major events was an international conference. The Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub co-organized Arrivals, Conflict, and Transformation in Maritime Southeast Asia, circa 1400 to 1800. And this was in commemoration of the 500th anniversary of the Southeast Asian part in the first circumnavigation of the world, in partnership with the Philippine Historical Association, the National Quincentennial Committee, the Society, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, rather, the Society of Indonesian Historians, Malaysian Historical Society, and the University of San Carlos in Cebu. And among our recent activities have been book launches, okay, works of fellows and affiliates of the center, and we have a lineup coming soon. We had the Democracy Discourse series, which is part of our social engagement activities. And just this week, we signed a memorandum of agreement for the establishment of research professorial chairs that will promote the study of Southeast Asia, specifically the Malay-Polynesian part of Southeast Asia. So just to summarize the accomplishments based on the objectives, we started by building a physical center, but COVID-19 created the circumstances for us to form a digitized center. What is very clear is that with our objective to develop a Southeast Asian awareness, okay, the departments of the College of Liberal Arts have included Southeast Asian components in their respective programs. And we see that the awareness of Southeast Asia in the conversations, the inclusion of Southeast Asia in the conversations within the university and beyond has also increased. Now, with regard making the center known locally and internationally, I believe we have achieved this because the Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub has become a household name, okay, in many parts, okay, of Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. They have become regular patrons of our activities, and especially mainly the online activities. We have created the network of Southeast Asian scholars and researchers. We have generated funds to support research. We have produced quality research with focus on Southeast Asia. And we have been actively engaged in social engagement activities. And the next one will be a research training webinar for the Mindanao State University. For my last slide, since I was given only 10 minutes for this presentation, I want to share some observations, the reflections. Okay, so COVID-19 was a setback, but it created opportunities for us. I believe that while at first, okay, the situation seemed so, uncertain, well, it later became clear that there were opportunities, and in the long run, it proved to be beneficial to the center because the digital environment promotes interaction, and this was not really within our radar in the beginning. So the online environment has certainly made it much easier to reach out to scholars within the region and to other centers around the world. In fact, at the moment, we are also, we have begun preparing for the MOU signing with the Humboldt University, a Southeast Asian Research Center in Humboldt University. We found that there is a yearning among Southeast Asian scholars to work with each other, with decolonization as a very common objective. COVID-19 brought Southeast Asian scholars together through webinars and other online engagement. So it was really a catalyst of change. And lastly, technology, particularly Zoom, plays an essential role. So Search's early adoption of Zoom and the university support have been very essential in our success the past year and a half. And this is where I'll end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fernando. Please correct me if I'm wrong, sir. This is one of the newer research centers in the
Yes.
university, right? It has
Yes.
been established for how long na, sir?
Only since the last quarter of 2019.
And yet, you were able to present so many outputs from the center. So
Well,
congratulations, sir.
Actually, I just want to mention that we even had an initial setback when Taal volcano erupted
Yeah.
because our office is located in La Laguna. So we were established during the last quarter of 2019. We were setting up the office. If you noticed in the pictures, there were still
Yeah.
wires sticking out of the floor.
Yes.
Okay, so we were literally just installing what we needed, and then the campus was locked down because of the eruption. So that was the first challenge.
Yeah. But sir, it was really intended to be there in the Laguna campus. That was the plan.
Well, the office we have
The
is in
office
Laguna
at least.
campus.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, sir. Thank you, sir, for
You're welcome.
presenting the center, which is very clear in its identity. You could see how it differs from the other research centers and how useful the center could be in the future, especially in the future post-COVID. So thank you, sir. I have announced through the chat box that the remaining minutes for this plenary will be spent for a quick and short interaction among the four presenters. So it's your time now to perhaps react to anyone from the group to somehow synthesize our discussion this morning. So anyone can start. You can react to anyone's presentation this morning. Who would like to start among the four?
Well, I can start.
Okay, sir. Please do.
So, well, you mentioned that the Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub has a very clear identity. To some extent, yes, but to some extent, no as well.
Mhm.
Okay, because while we have a clear geographic focus, since we are an interdisciplinary research center, then our research covers both the humanities and the social sciences. And well, I don't know if it's really needed. I don't think it is because, as Dr. Ador mentioned earlier, we have a strong, bond. We trust each other and we we believe in each other. But nonetheless, I want to apologize if the Southeast Asia Research Center sometimes seems to invade on your territory. I mean, there's no turfing in LaSalle. Okay, but of course, normally, if I do feel that we might give out that sense, I reach out and inform the directors. So, but that is the thing about it. Being an interdisciplinary research center, there are elements that are literary, elements that may be concerning governance, okay, etc. But our focus is really more on the Southeast Asian region.
Thank you for the clarification, sir. Yeah, anyone can just jump in.
From our end, from the institute, I think I would talk with Dr. Fernie before, and I reassured him that sa amin kasi this is a pandemic situation, and it's unavoidable talaga maraming mga overlaps with the work of our respective institutes. For example, our work, SDRC, I imagine, also there are overlaps, but I think we trust each other, and we believe that all the work that we do actually complements each other's work. So sa amin, we don't draw much line or boundaries within ano yung sa amin. Ito yung amin lang, no? And we're happy to share, no? As you can see, one of my points in that I raised as collaboration is actually the norm, and everybody just pitches in what they can, no? With or without the formal partnership. So sa amin, we're happy to work with anyone, directly or indirectly, or we let everyone do their thing.
On the part of the Bienvenido Santos Creative Writing Center, no, I just wanted to probably add something that I didn't mention before, and this was, of course, the use of the technology that we have now on Zooms and Zoom meetings and everything. The center has used Zoom to full advantage, especially with some book launchings and everything. And there's going to be we're putting together a work on the study of on the studies on the works of Dr. Cirilo Bautista, no, the our national artist for literature, who was a faculty member of De La Salle. And this use of this continuous use of Zoom, no, has put us much in touch, not with institutions in other parts of in other provinces and parts of the region, no? And and it has continuously placed us in contact, no, with many other writing centers in the Philippines. So, and hopefully that a workshop could be we're putting a workshop together for creative writing workshop for not only the to continue the job of the creative writing center, and probably to add, no, with Dr. Santiago's new the new agreements that were made, no, on the Southeast Asian research, no, probably we can probably work together on a refocusing, not refocusing, but re-adding, no, adding Southeast Asian literature as part of the Bienvenido Santos Creative Writing Center. No, of course, our focus is usually on Philippine literature, but the well, other countries, the Latin American and everything. But probably we can have a new refocusing also on putting together something for Southeast Asian researches on Southeast Asian literature.
Wow, that's interesting, sir. From your end, Doc Caridad.
Yeah, siguro I'd like to make 3 points. One is I'd like to share what Dr. Santiago, Dr. Torneo, and Dr. Torres mentioned already about the potential collaboration, and I think not only potential but actual collaborations that have been happening. So there are really a lot of points of convergence for the different CLA centers, and that I speak also on. Although I'm not the current director of SDRC, but we really acknowledge the convergences and working with the different centers and the different faculty, not only of CLA but other colleges. So that's one. So among the different center, and then the second point is for SDRC. I think through the years, SDRC has collaborated or has engaged faculty from the different colleges, and the interdisciplinary nature of it. And currently, in relation to the topic that I shared, so SDRC has several projects that are related to mental health. Okay, so one, mental health of workers, and then another one, it's really like developing remote counseling program, again relying on the technology. And SDRC has also a book project, so narratives and knowledge in the midst of COVID-19. So I think several CLA faculty has contributed to that particular book, and it will be out soon. So that's my point in terms of the SDRC. And now on a more personal and individual levels, I think the challenge, so I speak of mental health, is that while we're very mindful of the things that we're doing for our centers, for the university, and all the accomplishments. So, well, as a psychologist, I also like advocate that it's very important that taking care of our mental health and healthcare is actually embedded and integrated in all the things that we do. So we talk of sustainability. The end of the day, the real resource of all the things that we're doing are really people. So it's very important that we support one another and be a source like encouragement, so that so we thrive in all the things that we do, both at an organizational level and at an individual level.
Okay, thank you, Doc. And since all of you talked about interdisciplinary works and research, might as well extend it to us at BAGSED leader. We only have one research center, but yeah, we are looking forward to some possible collaborations with you. So Dr. Shirley Dita is our research director. So yes, with that, we're closing the plenary session now. So again, thank you to our four speakers. Thank you for the time, for the expertise, for the thoughts and ideas shared to our audience. Maraming salamat po. Animal Lasal. Salamat po.
Thank you.
Joseph?
Thank you, Dr. Joanne. So before we end, we would like to invite everyone to participate in the remaining activities of the 14th DLSU Arts Congress. So at 12:45 p.m., the pre-recorded parallel session 3 videos will already be available on YouTube. At 2:30 p.m., we will have the last plenary session for this year's Congress entitled The Art of Photography in the Time of COVID-19. Lastly, at 4:15 p.m., the pre-recorded parallel session 4 videos will already be available on YouTube. So, can I ask everyone to please open their cameras so that one of our graduate student assistants will take a picture for souvenir.
Right,
So
there are
Kenneth,
two pages. Okay, thank you, Joseph. Yes, there are two pages here. I'll screenshot the first one. Please turn on your cameras. Okay, 1, 2, 3. The next page. 1, 2, 3. All right.
thank you, Kenneth. So with that, we now end this morning's plenary session. We would like to thank our speakers for today, namely Dr. Maria Caridad Tarroja of the Social Development Research Center, Dr. Jose Victor Torres of the Bienvenido and Santos Creative Writing Center, Dr. Fernando Santiago Jr. of the Southeast Asia Research Center and Hub, and Dr. Ador Torneo of the Jesse M. Robredo Institute of Governance. Many thanks as well to Dr. Joahna Mante-Estacio for moderating this morning's session. And to you, our dear participants, thank you very much and see you in this afternoon's activities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joanne.
Thank you,
Dr.
thank
you.
you, Dr.
Salamat po.
Joanne.
Salamat
Okay,
po.
bye,
Thank
bye.
you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.